We'll call the meeting to order for the Broadband Committee at 11:03. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
Second it.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Why don't we just get right into the report from Entry Point?
Well, good morning, everybody. This is Nicole with Entry Point, and we've shared the initial draft with all of you. And when I say initial draft, the reason I say that is because now the idea is that we walk through it, answer any questions you may have in the immediate, and the idea is that you will review it together as a committee, consolidate any comments, questions, edits. This is a living document. It's your document. We want to ensure that it reflects your perspective and your direction. And so then we will come back together. And after you've had a chance to do that, we'll walk through those changes and then we will make those edits and provide back to you a final draft of the document. So I am going to turn it over to Devin to familiarize everyone with the document, to kind of give you the method behind our madness, so to speak. And we can go from there with any questions and any discussion.
So I'm getting some feedback from somewhere. Is anybody else getting feedback?
Yeah, if you can mute, if you're not talking, if you can mute, because there was some feedback, some voice was coming over. Go ahead,
Okay.
Devin.
Can you guys hear me okay without feedback?
Yeah,
Excellent.
I got you.
Okay. Do I have share rights on this bridge? Do you know? Let's see if it'll.
You
let me.
should, yes. Yep.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
And before you start, Devin, I just was curious. Nicole, you and I had chatted about some of the where we were looking at correlations around data from the survey. Did you guys capture that in this report at all, or do you have any of that information for us?
We do have a summary of the survey results and we can talk through those. However, this was not a conjoint analysis survey. So doing some of if this, then that type of thing is pretty impossible to get to.
Yeah.
However, as we go through this, you know, if you have specific questions that you're trying to relate back or tie to, we can talk through those, and there might be an off chance, right, that we can work through that. So Devin, when we get to that section, maybe we can stop and talk through that a little bit more in depth about what it is they're trying to really hone in on.
Sure. Happy to do that. And I'm going to be looking off to the side so you guys can see the side of my face. Hope that's okay. So essentially the study is, and the documentation is organized around kind of the introduction, which is a vision statement of the project, what you're trying to accomplish, and that came from you. So we just document that. An executive summary, if you will, an overview of some of the key findings, some of the key questions that are very, very important that a community like yourself ask as you're evaluating this type of a project. Then we get some specifics about your, the demographics, the environment you are in, specific to your town. And then we really get into the financial modeling, and based upon the design, based upon the bill of materials that came out of that design, based upon regional, our understanding of regional labor rates and construction costs and those kind of things, we come up with a couple of very specific financial data points that we'll go through with you. Then we go from there into market analysis. So what did we find when we researched East Haddam as far as the providers that are there today and what packages they're offering? We also, as part of the market analysis, pulled reports from MLabs, which is the Ookla data, which is essentially an open source. Anytime somebody does a speed test throughout the country, it captures that data. and what the results of that speed test were. So we'll show you the specific speed tests for your town and the results of those for all of 2021. And we also then get into the market. This is where the survey data also comes in. Okay, and we'll go through that. And then we have quite a lengthy section of kind of what are the next steps involved if you wanted to move a project forward. What are the decisions that need to be made and so forth and so on. So we won't get into a lot of detail, but I'll touch on a couple of these things. And we'll let you guys read independently, you know, the information. And then as Nicole said, get back to us. And then we have an addendum section. The addendum section is essentially kind of general information related to different types of media for communication, different network architectures that are available. There's basically two main architectures. We're talking about fiber infrastructure, and we kind of discuss those two. We talk about the variabilities of you know, what it looks like from a community engagement perspective, what that would look like. So, and those are not, that data is not specific necessarily, a little bit on the engagement, community engagement, but it's not really specific to East Haddam, right? It's kind of general information that we share with all of our clients. That's why we put in an addendum. And then finally, we have a glossary, because a number of our clients came back to us a while back and said, you're using all these acronyms and terms, I don't know what they mean. And so we make sure we document the acronyms and the terms and the, you know, those kind of things. Okay. So going into it really quick, we talked about the vision statement. This should be familiar with to at least some of you, if not all of you. Okay. Then we get into the executive summary. Okay. Some of the things we found, some of the definitions of the FCC. We then get into the key questions, as I talked about, and really they revolve around, you know, why should you consider building municipal fiber optic network? What would a sustainable financial model look like? And what are the next steps involved? So those are the core questions. We summarize them somewhat here. And then we get into them. We have specific sections just for those, okay? With a lot more detail. This is talking about what would a sustainable model look like? So what are the key components of what we would call a successful sustainable network, okay? So improved affordability, and we go through 8 different things that you should look for and focus on, okay? Then we get into, like I said, the environment. This is essentially the demographic information about your town per census information that we researched and feedback that we receive from you. Okay. And then also, as part of this, we identified what's called the anchor institutions as they're defined by the BEAD financing rules that have come out around the federal money that's becoming available for broadband expansion and build out. Okay. And we identified not a lot of them in East Haddam. You have a few, you have a handful, and we identified them there on the map. Okay. Then we get into financial modeling. The first thing we want to make sure that we clarify is in East Haddam today, what is an estimation of the amount of money being spent on broadband connectivity, and this is just residential broadband connectivity, okay? So of the 4,110 households, we assess that the vast majority of them actually have a broadband service going to their home. They're not just using their cell phone, or they're not, you know, they're going without. Again, that's based on your demographics. So if 4,100 people, households, have internet connectivity, and the national average for broadband connectivity residential is $75, $74.99. Okay, and we referenced the consumer report that just came out last month, kind of identifying that and how they assess that. So there's a lot of very good information. So if that is the case, then the residents of East Haddam are spending just under $3.7 million a year in broadband connectivity costs. And over 20 years, that equates to just under $74 million. Okay. Now, the reason why we specify this and why we analyze this is because it's very important to know that if you do this right, if you build infrastructure correctly and efficiently, and if you connect people with great value, okay, then the amount of money that they will spend to get that accomplished as a community should be dramatically less than the amount of money you are currently spending. So this is not a new expense. This is not a new tax. This is not a new, household expenditure. What we're doing is, if we educate the community correctly, what we're telling them is, look, here's what you're getting. I'm going to increase what you're getting dramatically and improve upon it. And I'm going to either lower or be a net neutral on your cost that you're currently paying. And over time, I'm going to be a huge net savings over what you're paying, again, depending on how the town builds out and manages the network. Fair enough? So that's why we do a baseline establishment of, look, you guys are spending about $3.7 million. Okay, that's assuming the average is $74. I can almost guarantee you the average in East Haddam is much higher than that, probably around $95. Okay, but we're just going to go national average. All right. So then from there, now that we've established what is being paid today, then we establish what would the financial modeling on a per subscription basis be under the following assumptions. Number one, that 60% of the households in East Haddam actually sign up for the community network, fiber network. Okay. And two, we build three different models. If we deploy it in an aerial configuration, meaning we're hanging it on the telephone poles and power poles. Okay, it's one cost structure, because deploying aerial from a construction perspective is less expensive than burying the network, right? So typically, especially in the Northeast, we're seeing a hybrid model where part of it's buried, part of it's aerial, just depending upon the neighborhood, the geology of the town, right? So we did 100% aerial, 100% buried, and then what we think is probably going to be the mixed configuration, at least close to it for East Haddam, and that's a 20% buried and about 80% aerial deployment. Okay,
and in that, Devin, in that subscription cost, are there pole rental fees through the, is that included in this?
This is, we don't know exactly what the make ready process would be, okay, or the pole attachment fees. We have some budgeted some kind of, if you will, what's the term I'm looking for? We have padded some additional dollars to build out some reserves. That's the word I'm looking for. And we anticipate that those reserves will cover those fees, those attachment fees, those annual fees, but we don't know until you get in. In fact, all of these numbers that we're showing you here need to be hardened. And the way you harden them is go through an RFP process where you actually get construction companies giving you proposals back on building this, and then you can validate all these numbers. Because not only will these numbers potentially shift because of supply chain and cost of materials and so forth and so on, upwards and downwards, by the way. We've seen huge amounts of volatility, again, because of COVID and the supply chain disruptions that we had over the last couple of years. We've seen, a conduit triple in price and then go back down to below where it was, right? So we've had it kind of all over the place. So again, this is a is a projected pro forma. It's not a, you know, these, we want to make sure it's very clear to you that these numbers need to be hardened through the RP process. Fair enough? But this is a good kind of budgetary, you know, methodology for you. Okay. One other thing you'll notice here is we believe in the concept of unbundling. Okay. Whereas Comcast believes in bundling everything, right? Now, the reason we believe in unbundling is because if you unbundle it, number one, all of your costs to the consumer are completely transparent. And consumers like that. They really do. They appreciate it. The second reason, though, and probably the most important, is that if you separate and unbundle the infrastructure cost, that's the cost of physically installing and building out the network. If you separate that from the maintenance and operation, the monthly cost of actually keeping the network running, and then you separate that through open access and bring in multiple ISPs in an open access model so that you have real competition amongst ISP and service providers. If you separate those, then you can individually maximize the savings, right? So you can work on the cost structuring and eliminate costs, eliminate overhead by focusing individually on those three buckets. So that's why we carve them out. It's very intentional. Okay. So in these cases, you can see from an infrastructure cost, 34, 37, 48, just depending upon buried versus aerial. Okay. So there's a significant difference. But on the other hand, a buried network tends to have less maintenance long-term, right? Because you don't have storms coming through and causing, you know, problems and disruptions and breaks and so forth. So again, there's trade-offs there. We anticipate through our process that your maintenance operations would be about $20.50 a month. And then from an ISP perspective, again, it's going to be an open marketplace of competition. But right now on the networks that are already deployed, an average gigabit connectivity is about $10. And it goes from just under $10 up to about $15 to $20, just depending upon the ISP. Okay. So then you can see, generally speaking, what the monthly cost for gig connectivity would be. Any questions about that? Okay.
I have a quick question. What's a BRE number? I assume it's somehow getting from the total number of premises to what you think you would actually connect to. There must be some formula. I don't see it in the glossary.
Yeah, I'll get that in just a second. So the BRE number is, we did the BRE design where they ran fiber to every premise in East Haddam, as far as the design is concerned. You've seen that, right? We showed you that, I think. If we haven't, we need to, and we will. We took that design then, and out of that, so they identified that there's 4,110 physical premises. So that's houses, that's buildings, okay, in East Haddam. That's how many endpoints their design created, okay? And then out of that, we get a bill of materials. And then we feed that bill of materials into a pro forma cost calculator that combines all of that materials cost and then adds labor components and management components and all that on top of it. And then that's where these numbers come out of, okay? This is based upon 60% of that number, right? So, and let me get to that real quick. Let me skip a little bit. So this is showing the importance of take rate, okay? And I encourage you to kind of spend some time on this, because if instead of getting a 60%, you guys get an 80%, that significantly, I mean, I would say dramatically, it's all relative, but it significantly decreases the cost per consumer, right? Because now you've got a lot more people sharing what we call the common infrastructure costs. That's the main roads going to the neighborhoods and then down the streets in the neighborhoods, right? So, we kind of use 60% of our as our baseline here. And that means each connection is going to cost $5,810, okay, per premise to install the fiber. Okay, the physical fiber and all the electronics to light it up. Well, if you get 70%, that number drops by $800. Okay, if you get 80%, that number drops by not quite by what, $1,300 per premise. So that's significant from a percentage perspective. Okay, so our point is this: the more participation, the lower the cost for everybody. On the reverse is also true, obviously. If you only get 40%, then a connectivity cost per subscriber is $8,300. Okay. And the town's got to identify, okay, where is our sweet spot? Where's our Mendoza line where we don't build a network unless we have at least this much support and take rate, right? I mean, where is that number? That's what you need to decide as a community. Okay, any questions about that? So then going back so we've already shown you, here's what it is, here's what it represents in a per subscriber. Here's what it means in an overall construction costs, overall deployment costs. Okay, so again, at an 80-20 split, you're at just over $14 million in total costs of installing fiber to 60% of the premises and into every neighborhood, all the main streets and roads of the town. Okay. And again, very interested in you reading through the methodology, the assumptions, the percentages, the interest rate we've applied to it. And if you have any concerns or questions, or, hey, I'd like to see this run with this percentage rate or this, and we can do those things. That's what this process of review is all about. Okay.
So Jeff threw in the chat, right, that $17 and something per pole on average. Is that built into your assumptions? Some number, you talked about a contingency or something there. That's built into this 14 million in some way, shape, or form.
Well, it's built into not the 14 million, it's built into the maintenance and operation fee, the $20.50. Because that's going to be an ongoing annual fee. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Now there's make ready. Now, what do we mean by make ready? Well, again, depending on who owns the poles, some people are real, you know, if you've got poles that are very, very old, the utility, whoever owns that pole, can require that you replace that pole with a brand new one if you're going to hang. Because if they go out and determine through engineering practices that, you know what, that pole's already loaded, it's already maxed out, you want to add something to it, a connection to it, well, guess what? You're going to have to upgrade the pole. So there are usually some costs involved in that during the construction process.
Okay.
But again, we don't know that until you get into the, into the process.
All right. So I just want to make, I wanted to understand for me that we're somewhere that number is built into this. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. We've got, and again, it's kind of it's pro forma. So we don't have the exact numbers, but we build in some what we call reserve factors, where each month a certain amount, and I'd have to go back and look at the financial pro formas, but I think it's usually between $3.50 and $5 that we build in there as a reserve for those kind of miscellaneous expenses that come up. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go back here. We already talked about take rate. And then this just kind of rounds out, say, okay, so these were based upon the 4,110 premises at a 60% take rate. So this is all based, the pro forma is all based upon 2,466 households or businesses signing up and taking service through the network. Okay, so that's your goal. All right, then on market analysis. So we went through, and what we do is we identify 5 to 6 specific addresses inside of East Haddam. We just randomly select them on a Google map. And then we go to the, in this case, Comcast website, and we search on that address. And then they return here's all the plans available for that particular home or business. Okay. And then we organize them in the plans by kind of beginner to least expensive to most expensive, or least amount of data to most amount of data. And so according to Comcast, these are the plans available in East Haddam. And the thing about Comcast and the other cable companies is that if one address it has the ability, then they say all of them do in the entire town. Okay, so and then you have to contact them and say, okay, I live at this address, I want the 1200 by 20 plan, and they'll tell you whether that's available at that time. Okay, so what we find is typically they will, from an advertising perspective, tell every community that they have the highest and best available. But then when you get into the neighborhood, if that system has not been upgraded to their no DOCSIS 4 system, then you're not going to get above 900. And very few neighborhoods throughout the country have been upgraded to that level. Very, very few, especially in, downtown areas of large metropolitan areas. Yes, but not communities like yours. Typically, we find that. Now, we could be wrong, but that's something we typically find. But again, they are advertising that you can start out with 50 by 5 package for $65, and then it goes 100, 300, 600, 900, 1200, and 6,000, which is 6 gig. Okay.
So
and you can see the prices they advertise accordingly.
So this is looking at this as a straight monthly plan, like not looking at bundles, not looking at long-term commitments, not any of that.
This is internet only. Okay. So if you were to just, sign up for just internet connectivity, and this is, again, they don't specify on their website whether it requires a multi-year plan, but typically we see, especially if it's a first install, like a new customer, they require anywhere from a 12 to 24 month plan, but it is not specified just generally on their website. Okay, so we're not making that claim in this document. We are saying that if you want to an additional modem with Wi-Fi, it's additional $14, and then they're very, very clear that it is a shared network. These speeds are not guaranteed, because they can't guarantee the speeds, because they never know what your neighbor is going to be downloading while you're trying to download something, right? And again, your neighbor, because it's a shared network, your neighbor's activities affect your performance. Okay, so those are just kind of the standards that we see as far as the default, disclaimers and so forth. Okay, well, that'll give you an idea. So this is also why, when we go back to the conversation of what are the residents of East Haddam paying today, this is why I made the statement. It's very likely your average is higher than $75. It's more like $95, just because unless you got a lot of people on that 50 by 5 plan, which I doubt very much, given the mean income of your residents that you're on that plan, most people are going to be on the 100 or 300, and those start at $84 and go to almost $100. Okay.
So Yeah, and I get this. I just wonder, like, I am on the 1200 by 20 plan. Now, I may not get it in the speeds, but that's technically what it is. And I am paying nowhere near $113 a month. I can tell you that.
Are you on a promotional plan?
So it's a 3-year. That's why I was asking about the contract prices and looking at that. So it was a 3-year commitment.
Yeah,
But it's $78 a month, I think, for
That's great.
$79 a month for a 3-year commitment. So that's where I get nervous about numbers like this going out to the public. If we ever do get to a point of public hearing or anything, where how we vet these even more to kind of understand. And from what you guys got from survey, sorry, survey data back, what does this line up from the overall survey? And looking, like, I know we gave you the towns and what you got. How do these-
yeah, we'll show you that in just a second.
Okay.
So again, the website does not specify promotional rates, contract commitment rates, bundling rates, those kind of things. Okay, I mean, if you're going to sign up and you want to have a conversation with them and you want to be very specific, they'll share that information with you. We don't go that extent. We say what is being advertised on their websites. By the way, at the time we did the research, and this is cases back in October, right? And it changes periodically. And so this is the residential Comcast results that we got. This is the business results we got. Okay. So in the business, they're very clear about 2-year and 3-year commitments, and they give you a little bit of a price break if you do a longer commitment versus a shorter commitment. But in this case, you've got $100, or excuse me, 100 megs, whether you're 2 or 3 years, it's a $10 difference. Equipment is required, so it's basically, $130 plus 19, so it's $150 for a 100 meg package. 250, you're sitting at 170 roughly, or 160, or excuse me. I think we have those two numbers reversed. Actually, I think we'll have to go back and look at that. I think this is, I could be wrong, but I think this is the 169 and 149. And then you can see here, as you get into the higher plans, they just kind of go up, and you can get a 2-year, 3-year. So this is the information we got again off their website, and then what they claim to be an install fee on each of these. Interesting thing to note also. So we've got Comcast as the cable company. We've got Frontier is essentially the local telco, right? We could not find, we searched on at least 10 or 12 different addresses, physical street addresses, and we could not get any results from Comcast. From Frontier. So what that tells us, and we've seen this in other, like for example, this was the exact same in Connecticut, in Bristol, Connecticut. So we've seen this in other locations of Connecticut where there are people being served by Frontier on their old DSL technology, their the old telephone lines, but they're no longer offering new customers that service. They've completely stopped offering that to anyone new. So they've grandfathered in existing customers, and we know that because in the survey results, we actually show people with Frontier DSL service, but they're not offering it anymore. And they're not yet offering fiber, because every address we searched on for their fiber service came back as not available. Okay, so that's just a note about Frontier and what we found in our research. Okay, then moving on, I talked about the MLab data, the speed test data. Again, we only show speed test data that was returned for Xfinity. and Xfinity is showing on average a 91.66 download speed and a 10.4 upload speed. Okay, which is pretty decent, depending upon what package you're getting. Yeah. So if you're getting a 100 meg package, that's pretty decent. If you're getting the 300 meg package, not so great. If you're getting the 1200 meg package, definitely not great. Okay. But that just gives you kind of the return for the 2021 period. Survey data. So we have classified and essentially list the results of the survey, okay, by kind of category or topic, right, or question, right? So you guys can go through this. I'll just point out a couple of things. As far as current internet access goes, 90% have a fixed wired connection to their home or business. Okay. And 7.5% have a cellular connection. Of those fixed wired connections, 86% have Spectrum Comcast. This is actually wrong. This should be Comcast, not Spectrum. So that's, again, as we go through this, we're finding things we need to edit. And Frontier has a 12%. That's what I was saying. Frontier does have customers. They are servicing customers, but they're just not taking any new customers. And of those 0 or fiber, you got a small group of satellite, and you've got I don't knows out there. Okay, but this essentially represents a near monopoly of the cable company, which I think everybody on this call knew. Okay, going to the next page. How do they rate reliability, speed, and affordability? We'll let the numbers just kind of speak for themselves. So 41% said the reliability is poor or fair. 44% said that the speed is poor or fair, and 87% said that the affordability factor, the cost, is poor or fair. Okay, that's quite a jump. So half of them are saying, yeah, it's pretty good service, but then an overwhelming number are saying, yeah, but it's way too expensive. Okay, when asked what they think a really good affordable rate is, the vast majority of the people, as you can see here, are in that 21 to 60 range. Whoops, right there. Okay. And then when asked, should the town sponsor a fiber network deployment, 98, almost 99% said yes, or yes, I could possibly support that. So it's either I will absolutely support the town doing this, or I will possibly support the town doing this. I need more information. 2.5% said, no, I don't want this town to do this. That's a very high percentage. Normally, I would say across the country, the average is probably about 75% say yes, or possibly yes, I need more information. You guys are way higher than that. Okay.
Did we ask, I know we asked if you thought it was affordable, currently, but did we actually ask how much they were paying in a dollar amount?
We did not.
I don't remember. Yeah, I didn't think we did.
We did not.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the market research piece. Okay, then we get into next steps. And again, next steps is probably one of the largest sections we have, because there's lots of things to consider and lots of decisions to be made if you want to move forward with this process. Okay, so we talk about key decisions that need to be made, the importance of strategy. Very interested in your feedback here. We talk about public network ownership, talk about public-private partnerships and a hybrid model. We talk about, operations. So there's a lot of really, really good content here. Super interested in your feedback in this section. Okay. So other considerations, long-term stability, the authorities that are required, risk mitigation, those kind of things. Okay. And then we get into operational. How do you operate the thing? Okay. Is it an opt-in voluntary? How do you handle billing? How does that best practices that way? Okay. And then you've got to decide on the operational model. Here's some ownership considerations, closed versus open. These are kind of summaries of things we've talked about in the past. Here are some definitions for you as we're talking about these things. And then finally, we talk about federal policy and opportunities, and then finalizing and selecting the operational models. Okay. Then beyond the 3 key decisions, we want to give you as much depth as we can. This information you probably want to distill down once these decisions are starting to be made by the committee, by town leadership. Then to the public, you want to obviously make this available to them if they want to read through it, but then summarize a lot of these points and summarize a lot of this content for consumer, for the consumption by the consumer. But if they want to get into the details, they're welcome to do so, is what we generally see with our clients. Okay. Excuse me. Let me go back here. So that's the next steps section. Okay. And then this is the addendum section that I referred to, which is kind of more general information about infrastructure grants that are available, that are coming online, about network architecture, about passive systems versus switched Ethernet systems, the advantages, disadvantages of each, the definitions there, comparison of available media. We kind of gone through this a little bit with you a long time ago. That is fiber compared to DSL, compared to cable, compared to satellite. Different network models we cover. We identify what are the different types of municipal networks that are out there and the models that they follow, and what are the pros and cons of each one. We go through a risk assessment. So these are the 11 risk factors you need to be aware of, what they are, the likelihood of it happening in East Haddam, and then what are the mitigation steps you want to take to avoid the risk. So we go through each of those 11. Then we go into community engagement. What would that potentially look like? And what are best practices there to get the word out? Because again, the success of the network and whether you can afford to do it is all based upon participation and take rate, right? So this is definitely a community effort. And then finally, we have the glossary of industry terms that we talked about, and then also specifically about open access terms, because we reference open access models throughout the report. Okay. Any questions about any of that?
No
I
question.
have one general question.
Wayne, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
I can drop, I'm trying to scroll on another screen. I can drop a link, but there was an article in the Current not too long ago, maybe within the past week, about the Current is doing a type of feasibility study. It sounded to me like it was for underserved communities. But I think anybody looking at it would be, the question might come up, well, why don't we just let the state do it? Are we duplicating efforts, that type of thing? I'm just going to click and drop it into chat so people can see what it is. It's from the Hartford Current.
So I can answer a little bit of that because I've been involved in conversations up in Hartford in regards to the broadband big picture. Underserved aren't necessarily, rural areas are considered underserved as well, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So we could navigate through what the state and feds are doing in regards to broadband and grants and things like that, because we are technically rural, and therefore we have people that don't have internet. So that is something that, we can certainly kind of jump on that bandwagon a little bit. So that is a possibility for us. I don't know if you have something different, Devin, but
So I think there's a real opportunity. We do address this in the report. That there are going to be state and federal funds, and even the federal funds are going to be administered in most cases by the states. Okay, so the feds are going to give the states a big bunch of money, and then the state's responsible for, for receiving applications and grants and issuing grants and so forth. So we think there's a real opportunity, especially in those areas of your town where there's only DSL. There's a huge opportunity to get some of that funding to supplement the deployment costs of the infrastructure. Okay, and that's going to be key to where the state will come in your particular situation. The other area that the state has researched, and we've been involved in these conversations, especially with the WestCog folks and other people we're working with in Connecticut, and that is the state is looking at, how do we interconnect all of these things through kind of a freeway system? So a middle mile connectivity options. And that's really, we're really bullish on that idea, because the states that are providing that, they're going to be light years ahead of the other states. Because I mean, think about it. It's just like our road systems. The state's responsible for the main freeway corridors. The county's responsible for the highways. And then the cities and towns are responsible for the municipal road systems, right? And they all three work together and connect everybody so we can drive anywhere we want to. Same kind of thing needs to happen with the fiber, right? And so you're either going to get the middle mile connectivity through or you're going to get it through a state, kind of middle mile connect or a network. And there are many states doing this. Connecticut's just researching it right now. But there are many states that are actually moving forward. They're converting their education networks, their higher education networks, into middle mile networks to connect communities. We hope Connecticut will look into doing that and move that direction, because that would benefit your town dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, there's currently two state fiber networks, right? There's the CEN, the Connecticut Educational Network, and then we also have the PSDN, which is the Public Safety Fiber Network. So you would think there's the ability to leverage that for sure, which would be helpful. And the CEN runs through the main furrow of our town for sure. So
that's where working with the state and have an advocate of the state, that could be, we absolutely recommend you do that. But we don't anticipate the state is going to come in and build out fiber infrastructure to the homes and businesses in East Haddam for quite some time, because let's face it, you're not exactly considered low income neighborhoods, right? So, and that's where they're focused. A lot of their effort is. So, but those that don't have cable connectivity, that's a real shot at getting some of that, certainly the federal money that'll most likely flow through the states. But love to take a look at that article. Appreciate you sharing it with us. Okay, I think that's it. Nicole, I'll pass it back to you to wrap things up if you have anything more to say. But we're very, very interested in your feedback, guys. That's the next step.
So I noted a couple of items along the way. It doesn't matter how many times you review, right? Or how many people you have review a document. And so we'll go ahead and make some of those adjustments. We'll also double check those 250 rates on Comcast in the business section to see if we got them inverted, and send back this draft to you to review. Again, if you could meet collectively as a group to review this document and consolidate your comments, your edits, your notes, and then we'll come back together and we'll walk through those, and then we'll make those changes. Again, this is meant to be a living document. It's meant to reflect your perspective. Hopefully we've given you a solid template to begin from. You know, and we're here to support you through this, you know, evolution in this process you're going to be going through to determine what direction you want to go. So with that, does anybody have, and we'll make these corrections today and get them posted today, so there's no delay. Are there any thoughts, questions, anything in addition you want us to make to the document before we send it back?
Not to the document in my mind, but I did have a question. How many people provided email addresses in the survey when they did the survey, like to be contacted? Do we know?
I'm sure we do have that information. We just need to look it up. When we reply with the document, we can share that with you.
I think for two reasons. One, I'm just thinking I'd love to validate some of those numbers around the Comcast costs, right? If we have 500 out of 598 people who provided info and we could email them directly and say, thank you for responding to our survey.
Sure.
We'd love to, we're trying to gather more detailed information now. Could you provide us what you pay and what plan you're on? It helps us validate some of those numbers that we're using, because there's a big difference between $113 and $79, right? And I would hate to go to the public and start presenting this if we're not putting true numbers out there.
Agreed.
The second thing is, I think that's a great group for us as we start to go public to be able to, they took the time to fill out the survey to be able to email and say, we're doing public hearings, here's the report, all of those types of things to get the stuff out there and people's involvement. So
absolutely. I'll see if we can download those into a spreadsheet for you. I'm sure that's possible. The other thing I was going to ask is that, did we receive any copies of residential or business billings as well? I didn't ever receive anything, so not sure if the collection was successful or not. We can also take that information and consolidate it and put it a summary together.
I have one business, and certainly my own. It sounds like I have the same service as Craig, but I'm not paying the same amount as Craig, so.
Okay, more or less.
We're paying about 105 a month,
Okay,
for I think it sounds like roughly probably the same.
okay.
I had thought I had sent you the schools bills and then a couple of individual people's.
Okay. I don't think we saw those, Eric, did we? So if you wouldn't mind sending those over, we can at least consolidate what you have and summarize it and put it into the document for our second draft. That may also help support. And Craig, to your point, I think everyone's experience is going to be slightly different, right? To Devin's earlier point, promotions, timing, right? I mean, rates can change on a daily basis, promotions can change on a weekly basis. So it's just timing and luck of the draw, or lack of luck of the draw.
Yeah. So one thing I want to make you aware too, this is going back to what Craig was saying. If you ask people, we used to ask people, what are you paying on the survey? And we got such wildly different responses because, again, as I said at the very beginning of this conversation, Comcast loves to bundle their stuff. And so, and a lot of people have a VoIP phone line, and they've got, cable TV and so forth. And so that's why when we first started this project, we said we'd love to collect invoices, residential and business, but make sure that we get all the pages of the invoice, because we have to go through and interrogate the detail of to find out, okay, what package are they on, and then unbundle that rate from the overall cost. Because if you just start asking people what they're paying, I guarantee you, Craig, the average you're going to get is over $200. Because that's the average paid to Comcast, but that doesn't reflect the internet spend, right? And we want to be fair about that by just isolating the internet. So that's why it's really tricky when you just ask, hey, how much are you paying? Because if I were to answer that question, it'd be $122 a month, or $222 a month, excuse me. But I know I've got cable TV packages and HBO and Showtime on top of all that, right? So But as far as my internet spend, I'm at, $89. Right? So that's the challenge. You can get the best data through collecting those invoices. So you may want to just ask them for a copy of their invoice.
Yeah.
On the pages instead of, hey, what are you paying? Because I think that'll be more accurate data.
Good call. Yeah, no, that's a good call.
Um,
I just think we have a captive group. We should use them to help us.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we can provide that information to you.
So I just, an overall question about what is this committee's charge going forward? Because my understanding was it was to be to facilitate this document. What is the continuing participation that we foresee going forward? Is this a presentation that gets made somewhere else, or where do we go from here?
Well, our charge is to present this ultimately to the Board of Selectmen, this report. And Irene, it helped me out here, but basically then the Board of Selectmen is going to have to make the decision whether to continue to move forward with the project based on the report.
I believe that's it. We just need to know, how feasible is this? We expend the money to find this out, and then, the next steps obviously are important, but I think, we can certainly come back to you all and say, would you help us go through to the next steps of this or not? But we can certainly at least start with the first step, which is getting this, because without this, we can't, we couldn't move forward. And one of the biggest things I think was creating this with the help of the public. And I think we did a great job as far as how many people we did get and reach on this. And, to Craig's point, I think because we have an actual active list of people who are engaged in this discussion, to reach back out to them and ask them for their bills so that we can really, drill down to what actually this means for the town of East Haddam. Going forward, we can continue again with this committee, but I think we need to at least get that information so that we have a clear report, right? So if we can do that last step, try and reach out to them, get some bills, and really see how this looks compared to what people are doing now, then we can move forward with it, and then we can decide whether or not you all want to continue or not.
So
What's the
just
next
a couple of things, kind of what we find most of our clients do, just to give you a little bit of guidance. The committee is very, very important to get those iterations of the draft. So it's just kind of refining the message. And then once we get to a final, that's the one you want to present to the select board. And in presenting it to the select board, typically most of the towns and cities we work with, they want to give them the report, but they don't want to walk through every page, kind of like I've done. They want more of a summary presentation. And we are happy to be part of that. We're happy to create that. We're even happy to deliver it if you want us to, or we can have one of you deliver it to them. But whatever you want from us, we typically go through and consolidate the findings of the report, some of the key elements of the report, into more of a PowerPoint presentation that is presented to the select board at a meeting. Take 15, 20 minutes, answer questions. That's typically how that's presented to the select boards and city council that we work with. So
That'd be great, Devin. I think what's so important for this committee is that you all, Tom and Wayne and Tom and Craig, we all spoke as residents here, right? As to, what do we need to know in order to do this? But ultimately, you, Devin, and your team are the brains behind the operation in regards to how this is actually going to work and what the next steps are. And you would obviously be best to answer the questions that the Board of Selectmen would have. And honestly, if we were to have a meeting and present this, it's a forecasted meeting, which means there's an agenda put out ahead of time. So there might be some public, general public there as well. And we do give them opportunity to speak at that meeting, as much as we can. So there'll be questions coming from them directly, which again, you guys are going to be the best to answer. So we'd appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely. We will absolutely do that for sure. Yep. All right. Thanks, everybody. I've got to run to another call, but thanks for your time.
Thanks, Devin.
Thank
All
you.
right, we'll look for the edited
Hey.
report, Nicole. Thank you.
Tom, can we just let them go and think about how we want to
Yeah,
do this from our side?
yeah. Is there anything else from entry point people? Anything else you guys have?
I think they left
They're
already.
gone
Yeah,
anyway.
they're all gone.
I guess the
Wow.
answer is no.
That would be a no, yeah. Okay, yeah, our next steps, I think there's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
I just got the report, a few hours ago. So I need to read it line by line and look at everything. And we have the holidays coming up, of course. So it's going to be even, I think, more difficult to do anything very quickly here. What I think we should do is all, go read it, write down your questions or comments or anything like that. And then we should reconvene and, with the holidays and everything, do we want to wait till after January 1st? To kind of reconvene? That'll give us a good 2 to 3 weeks, I think, to read it and, make our comments and get questions and that type of stuff. And then, I think if we find any errors or anything like that, we should just immediately reach out to entry point and say, hey, this is, we found some just going through it today. But if, any errors should just immediately be communicated to entry point. But I think we should, maybe at the, let me look at calendar here quick.
And while you're looking at the calendar, Tom, just
Yep.
an aside, I was at the last CCM conference and I spoke to Frontier while I was there.
Mhm.
And they're doing a lot of the last mile wiring here in town with fiber. And
Mhm.
they said, why are you talking to entry point? You should be talking to us. Da, da, da. We know, of course, that's whatever. But I think it's worthwhile to talk to the ones that have some infrastructure in place in our town already. And to
Mhm.
Craig's point with the CEN, that's something to look at to kind of see. That's another piece of what we need to do at some point, whether that's this committee or a new committee, that wants to do the next mile, so to speak,
Yeah.
as far as the broadband. But we should, I don't see why with this committee or whoever's interested wants to sit down with Frontier with me and see what they want to talk about, because they did want to talk to me about, what we would put in place for infrastructure, where their ownership might want to be, because to this point of this report that we received, we can decide whether or not we want to own it, whether we want somebody else to own it, whether we want to do
Mhm.
both. So it might be good just to sit down with Frontier, because they seem to be trying to get to the forefront of all of this in all towns, but they are here, they are putting up fiber. So let's talk to them and let's see what they're doing and let's see what they have as options, so that some of that, in my opinion, would help me understand this whole process better anyway.
Okay.
And understand the whole mile, middle mile, whatever. So all of that, I think it's a worthwhile thing that, we could at some point also reach out to them. I have the contact here, and get them in to just, hey, let's have a preliminary conversation, see what they have to say.
Okay.
Just putting it out there if
Yeah.
you're interested.
I don't think it hurts. You're locking you're still on creating a closed network, right? Because Frontier's not going to let Comcast onto their network.
No,
So
no.
that's where you get into the competition side of things. But
Mhm.
it would be good to understand for sure what their plans are in town.
Yeah,
Because a lot of it goes back to we need 60% participation or more to make this happen. So the last thing we want is Frontier to come in with a lower price comparable service, and then you don't get your 60%, right?
Mhm.
So you're in a, kind of between a little rock and a hard place.
yeah. And again, it's more for understanding, but to your point, we get Comcast in here too and see what they're doing and, all of that. And then I think the more we as a town share with the townspeople, then they can understand better what's ahead of them as well, right? And that maybe
Mhm.
we're creating the competitive, the competitiveness of this whole thing up front, so that people understand this is going to work for us and it's going to work well for us.
Yep.
Putting this in here. So
Mhm. I think, just looking at the survey results, affordability is a big issue with almost everybody, according to the survey. I think it was up around 90%, 88% or whatever the number was, that they feel like they're paying to. I'm paying with taxes and everything, I'm paying $125 a month.
and that's just for internet.
That's just for internet.
You see, to his point, when he was saying, Devin, you know, that when people look at their bills, they're like, my cable bill is $255. Well,
Yeah.
they don't know how much of that is internet.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, to Craig's point too, is that, you know,
Mhm.
if we can get those bills in,
Mhm.
then we'll know more, but I don't know what we're paying at all. I'd have to check with Steve.
Tom, what's the school paying?
I just forwarded that to Nicole.
Okay,
If you'll give me a second, I can look it up again.
Yeah, I don't use Comcast for anything else but internet. I have satellite TV and
Mhm.
phone through another provider.
So our total monthly cost is just about $1,500. So that's several lines coming in, obviously.
Yep.
But about $1,500.
okay.
Mm.
And you don't have a gig or anything like that for speed?
Yeah, we have, it should be a gig,
It should be.
but
But it
again, we
fluctuates.
have, 120 end users, so we
Yeah.
don't ever get their
Yeah.
top speed.
Hmm.
Plus you're coming in off the town street, so your
Yeah.
neighborhood is a whole bunch of people. You're probably fighting with the campground,
Yeah.
depending on their Wi-Fi and everything
Mhm.
else. So
Yep. Okay. If we want to reconvene and have our next meeting on Friday, January 6th, that'll give us 3 weeks to read the report, get all our questions and comments written down, and then we can reconvene on the 6th and see where we want to go. And hopefully we can get a final report, hopefully by the middle or end of January, to present to the Board of Selectmen. Is that okay with you, Irene?
That's fine, although I will not be here on the 6th, but I can
Okay.
certainly send questions ahead of
Yeah.
time and send it over to
Okay.
you.
All right, is that okay with everybody else?
yeah, I'm fine. I mean, I would even be fine. I don't know what people trying to come back in 2 weeks on the 30th. I don't know what people's, that Friday.
Yeah, I'm gonna be out of town on the 30th.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that week we're closed. Well, not that week, but that Friday, I think the town is closed.
Oh,
But I
'cause
mean, I
of-
could meet.
okay.
I mean, it's
yeah,
not a
yeah.
big deal.
No, that's fine.
Okay, so the 6th okay with everybody, 11 a.m.? Okay. Anything else?
Craig, feel better. My goodness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
dude. It's killing me.
Yeah,
Killing me.
yeah.
All right, well, happy holidays,
Yeah,
everybody.
happy
Yeah,
holidays.
same
Happy
to you.
holidays. Thank you all.
All right, all right.
Talk to you
Well,
soon. Bye.
all right. Thank you very much, everybody.